very good evening. Welcome to State of Business on our television. I'm Ashinsani Veerasinghe. Let's have a look at the headlines first. Prime Minister directs all state banks to follow a flexible and smooth loan process. Central Bank relaxes ownership limits in licensed commercial banks. News in detail. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa directs all state banks to follow a flexible and smooth loan process, assisting the general public who are in need of a relief. Premier made these directives addressing the progress review meeting of the Ministry of Finance. Officials of all the departments, institution heads and state banks chairpersons have been invited to brief on their projects and current status at the progress review meeting of the Finance Ministry. State Minister Ajit Niwad Cabral pointed out that people have a negative attitude on the Credit Information Bureau, most known as the CRIB, and highlighted the necessity of changing that attitude soon. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who led the meeting in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, also discussed over the changing of some of its regulations, such as refusing a loan for a person for the sake of being guarantor for a person who didn't settle a loan. State Minister Shrihan Semasinghe pointed out that he had been reported few irregularities when approving loans for Samurdhi beneficiaries and selecting the Samurdhi beneficiaries for such opportunities. Prime Minister directed officials that only criteria should be a member from a low-income family and other matters such as their politics should not be considered. Meanwhile, the Premier also announced that under the directives of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the government has already allocated an amount of 28 billion rupees for a new project dubbed as Sapiri Gamak. He also said that accordingly, over 14,000 GS divisions have already been identified and each village will be given around 2 million rupees for the urgent developmental requirements. The Central Bank has relaxed ownership limits in licensed commercial banks for both multilateral financial institutions and others. The Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka announces that 15% will be the maximum percentage of ownership of shares. As per the new directive, the new maximum percentage of ownership of shares is 15% for any shareholder referred to in section number 12. However, the limit for multilateral financial organizations such as the World Bank, International Finance Corporation, Asian Development Bank and any other similar institutions will be 20%. At the same time, those institutions or organizations need to be approved by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. The 20% expansion is subjected to the condition that the material interest acquired have to be reduced to 15% within a period of 10 years from the date of stipulation. The move follows the Monetary Board having considered the benefits to the banking system through the investments by multilateral financial organizations in the shareholding of licensed commercial banks. This specific move on multilateral financial organizations will facilitate the recent $50 million investment by IFC funds in commercial bank via a private placement for a 15.2% stake. Maximum shareholding in several banks vary and accordingly, Commercial Bank and Hatton National Bank have a ceiling of 10%. At Sampath Bank, business leader Dhammika Perera controlled Valuable One holds 14.95% and Ceylon Bank, the Sri Lanka Insurance, holds 15%. At DFCC Bank, HNB owns 15% stake, whilst at National Trust Bank, John Keel's Holdings Group owns nearly 30%. Again, business tycoon Dhammika Perera owns almost 30% of shares at Pan Asia Bank. The latest Global Innovation Index, which is an annual ranking of countries by their capacity for success in innovation, shows that Sri Lanka has dropped 12 places, ranking at 101st place in the latest Global Innovation Index 2020 from last year's 89th rank. The Global Innovation Index, published by the United Nations Specialized Agency World Intellectual Property Organization in partnership with key other global organizations and institutions, measured the performance of countries and economies in the area of innovation, which represents the majority of the global workforce and global GDP. Accordingly, Switzerland, Sweden, US, UK and Netherlands lead the innovation ranking for this year, and the top 10 is dominated by high-income countries. The latest ranking shows that Sri Lanka has dropped 12 places to be ranked at 101st place from the year before, with a score of 23.78 on a 0 to 100 scale, where 100 being the most innovative. Sri Lanka, performing at expectations before, is now performing below expectations for their level of development. Sri Lanka performed poorly in sub-indices of institutions, human capital and research, while showing strength in infrastructure, business sophistication and knowledge and technology outputs. Moreover, Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, Francis Gurry, says that one of the key findings of this year's ranking is that the money to fund innovative ventures is drying up, and that the impact of this shortage is innovation finance will be uneven.
COVID, of course, has disrupted everything, as we all are very painfully aware. And so what is the impact on innovation? Well, the data that we've assembled in the Global Innovation Index for 2020 shows that financing for innovation is drying up. There is a negative impact, which is what we would expect, of course, but that's confirmed by the data. Now, the impact is rather uneven as we see it. So in particular, the drying up of financing is going to affect startups, early stage startups in particular. It's going to affect other startups that have long-term research and development programs and ambitions, and it's affecting developing countries.
Stay tuned for more news after this short break. Welcome back after the break. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has advised the officials to take immediate action to provide the required fertilizer for the Maha season without any shortage. In the meantime, addressing a discussion held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday on the future plans of the State Ministry of Fertilizer Production and Supply, Chemical Fertilizers and Pesticides, President has instructed the officials that they should try to reduce the use of chemical fertilizers by 25% this year itself. Highlighting that payments have been duly made for the fertilizer imported this year, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa emphasized that the fertilizer required for lands and farmers should be provided in the required quantity, on time and in a high standard. On the other hand, President reiterated that the local fertilizer requirement should not be limited to imports but should be produced locally. It was noted that the single superphosphate from the Eppavala phosphate deposit has the potential to reduce the required amount for the country.
වහාම පොහොර ටික යවන්න. තීරණ ගත්තම එහෙම කරන්න ඕන. මට ඕන ගොවියට පොහොර ටික එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒ වතු වලට පොහොර ටික ඒ ටික යන්න ඕන. දැන් ඒවට තදින් ඉන්න ඕන. දැන් අපි සල්ලි දෙනවා නම් ආණ්ඩුවෙන්. ඒ කෑල්ල ටිකනේ අමාරුව සල්ලි හොයන එක. මෙච්චර කල් සල්ලි ගෙවලා නැතුව පොහොර බිලියන ගණනක් මේගොල්ලෝ ගෙනාවා. දැන් අපි සල්ලි දෙනකොට ගෙන්න බැරි හේතුවක් නැහැනේ.
Sri Lanka Ports Authority Chairman and the retired commander of the Sri Lanka Army, General Daya Ratnaik, explains how a child should be groomed to be a responsible citizen of the country. Accordingly, SLPA Chairman Daya Ratnaik made these observations joining the Art Talk Walk discussion program, which focused on discipline, law and order.
So there are four fundamental pillars on which the child's life is being developed or groomed. The first one is parental pillar. So our parents must understand how to groom their children. For that, parent must have that education background and all that. Then parent and the immediate family members and the larger society must understand how to groom a child. They are all everyone is responsible to develop a child. So that is called parental pillar. The second pillar is the knowledge pillar. The knowledge, the education, and that's basically what you get from the classroom. So the teachers and the school, the environment, everything should be set to give the right knowledge to the child at that stage, whether it is sex education or basics or everything. So that's education pillar. That's called knowledge pillar. the second pillar. Third pillar is called religious pillar. The religion, what you get from your religion, the values. These values are not there. The education getting through exams, but it is not so. The values of human being, values of people, values of society, values of parents, teachers, and all these values must be drilled into the hearts and minds of the children on the right age, and that also should be demonstrated in the society. All that is very important. So that is what you get from the religion. That's third pillar. No point having all these three things if the child is not being taught how to manage it. All this is being managed from teaching is done at the extracurricular activity pillar.
The Professionals National Front calls upon the government to prepare a new constitution which preserves one law for the country, bringing equality for all, and it further states that until then the provincial councils which bring different laws should not be convened. Thus, the Professionals National Front brought forward these observations, convening a media briefing in Colombo this morning to talk about the proposed 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Accordingly, the members of the Professionals National Front emphasized that the amendments to the Constitution that prohibit the signing of agreements that violate the law of the land are required. The organization highlighted that the education and health sectors in the country should be governed by the central government since the sectors are in deep crisis in the provincial council system. The organization is thus in the view that the provincial councils which bring different laws from province to province should not be convened. In the meantime, it further states that the country should have a constitution that protects the fundamentals of the country's sovereignty, territorial integrity, national integrity, as well as the protection of the rights of the citizens. We will be back with stock updates after this short break. Welcome back after the break. The trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a positive note today. The all-share price index gained 54.34 points to close at 5,370.39 and the S&P SL20 gained 27.12 points to close at 2,334.76. The turnover was 3.1 billion rupees and over 102 million shares were traded. Up next are forex rates. That's all the news for today. See you tomorrow with State of Business at the usual time. Until then, take care. Good night.